take public comments on the proposed renewal of site authorization for the cities of Toledo and Celeste and the Inn at Otter Creek. The hearing will be recorded to maintain a permanent record. Today is Thursday, December 13th. The current time is 6:13 p.m. and we are at the Newport Visual Arts Center. I'm going to call people to comment in the order that they signed up. Again, this meeting is being recorded, and by signing up to comment, you are consenting to be recorded. I will ask, I know this is an emotional issue for a lot of people, if you can hold any reaction or applause at the end of the comments, that would be great. It will help us with the transcription of the public record. DEQ will consider comments to the extent that our authority allows. Please be aware you may raise issues that are outside of scope of authority. You can also submit written comments via fax, email, or U.S. mail. The details on how to do this are included in the public notice document, which is available at the sign-up table up front. Written comments have the same weight as any comments provided during this hearing, and DEQ will be accepting comments through 5 p.m. on December 21st, 2018. After the comment period closes, DEQ will consider all comments received. I'll now begin calling the names of people who have signed up to speak. We have about 15 speakers. Is there anyone else that wants to submit a comment? If you decide to change your mind, then go ahead and get one of these slips at the front table and give it to the woman in the red dress up front. So the first commenter is Cindy Cart. Because we do have so many speakers, if you could just take a seat here. Because we do have so many speakers, we are going to ask that you keep your comments to 5 minutes. And my colleague Renee will give you a signal at the 1-minute mark and the 30-second mark. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Cindy Cart. I wear one hat, Cindy Cart hat. I get asked that a lot because I am involved in the community efforts a lot with wildlife, watershed, and contamination of the ecosystem. There are lots of things that are causing our problems, not just one. It's a million cuts to the ecosystem that's happening. And during that, we've had 100 years that we began the 6th extinction. That includes us if we don't turn this around. Part of what we're here tonight about is biosolids. That's why we're here tonight, to talk about that as a community. I've recognized so many faces in this room because I've worked on this for maybe 10 years, maybe longer, because I attended the Celeste Watershed Council meetings and they were really concerned that the river was dying. I've given testimony at Lincoln County Commissioners and did really good until I left my notes. And then I broke out in tears, crying, and asking, please, save our Celeste River. I was embarrassed, terribly, but I had to scold myself for being embarrassed because it comes from the heart. I love my Celeste River. You all love your Celeste River. And since Biosolids started, all of the locals have said, there's something bad in the biosolids because things are happening in the river that's never happened before. Well, biosolids are human waste. And human waste doesn't include just what we do. It includes industrial, hospital, everything comes into the sewer system within a city that is filtered through the wastewater treatment plants. Some of it comes out, some of it don't. Some of it goes into biosolids. Some of it just goes out into the river. We've had a lot of questions about pharmaceuticals and what pharmaceuticals are doing to us in our waste products. Well, DEQ doesn't test for very much. It only tests for a little tiny handful of things. Not all the possibilities by any stretch of the imagination. Of course, the possibilities of what could be in there is 1.5 million chemicals, because that's what we're doing to our ecosystem. And how do we do that, and how do we be able to help that? Well, we've become really good stewards of our watershed. we become good stewards of taking care of indigenous species. That includes humans. And how are we going to go about doing that? Well, we're going to stop putting biosolids on our fields. It is well documented for a very long time that there are things in it that don't do humans or the soil or the water or the wildlife good. One of the things that I heard from the Biosolids caucus meeting, the end of the summer sometime, if I remember right, seems like an eternity ago, but there was testimony by a local horse owner, and her horse got really sick from eating the hay from the biosolids. She has to go clear over into eastern Oregon where there's no people for them to spread biosolids around to be able to have hay for her horse. What is that doing to us when our elk eat the hay, when our cows eat the hay, and wildlife eats the hay, our elk and our deer? Well, they're out in the field, and they don't know that they're supposed to, elk don't know that they're supposed to stay off that field for 3 or 4 months. Yeah, the rancher can keep the biosolids in control, you know, and keep his cattle off, but he can't keep the elk off. So does that poison our meat too, where that woman has very well recorded history of sick animal? Well, we're making ourselves sick. There's a lot of my friends that have been sick that live out in that area of Logston. And it's long overdue that we just stop this nonsense. And I'm going to let you guys cover the rest. I've got 2 more meetings tonight, so I won't be able to stay too long.
Thank you, Ms. Card. Next up is Larry Hammons. And then on deck is Alan Davis.
Did you figure it out? How to hold it. Here, let me see.
I live at the 12 mile mark on Highland. Been there since 1989. I watched the river change like night and day. And just so you know that I'm not talking off the top of my head, I'm a retired engineer. I worked for food companies for 30 years before I retired. And so chemistry was my favorite subject. I know a lot about it. It scares the hell out of me sometimes to know these things. A lot of people I've talked to have even said they really don't want to know. It's so scary. The one thing that I've talked to the state people and a number of different officials about this problem with the biosolids. And the one thing that I think people really don't understand is that it isn't just the biosolids. There's other problems involved with this, but there's no reason why we can't know as a community what's in those sludge materials before they're put on the land. The state says they test the material. Well, just like she said, they test for a small range of heavy metals, from lighter to heavy metals, which are harmful, and that's great that they do that. But all the other things that go in there, just like she said, are not tested for. Now, why would they do that? Why would our great state allow this material to be put on the land without knowing what's in it? I believe that they do know what's in it. But if they were to publish that and make it public knowledge, there would be liability far beyond what the state could afford. So we need to know what's in that before it goes on the land, not after, not when the damage is already done. I've been on the Celeste River right on the first rain after that's been applied, just downstream, upstream from my place, and you can smell it. They say it doesn't get to the water. That's a damn lie. It does get to the water. You can smell it. And it runs off. It may not run directly toward the river, but it runs off into little ravines and streams. It goes one way, it goes the other way, and it ends up in the river no matter what. I've watched the salmon population crash. There used to be, my place had a 30-foot hole right in front of it. I used to throw a snorkel on, go in there and count hundreds of fish in there. Chinook salmon. There isn't a single fish in there now. The seals haven't helped any, but the fish population has just crashed. One thing that people don't think about, it isn't the toxicity, always the toxicity of this stuff. Salmon come back to their spawning waters because they taste that water. They get to the mouth of that river, and they sit up and they go, hey, that's where I came from. When you go in September, which is when they usually do it, and you apply those biosolids, and it runs off into the river at the exact time the salmon are getting ready to come up that river, that changes the taste of that water. And they can taste parts per million of a chemical, and it changes the way that they act. They go to the mouth of that river and they go, hey, this is not where I came from. It smells different, it tastes different. I guess I'm going to cruise on by and see if I can keep finding where that river was. And they don't find it. They end up in somebody else's river, or they don't end up spawning at all. There's a lot of other damage going on, logging, things like that. I've watched some of the spawning beds get silted over from excess logging, things like that. But my biggest worry is that there's no reason why we can't know what's in that sludge before it's put on the land. And I've asked that gentleman there, and I've asked a lot of other people why I can't know. They say, well, we can't test for everything. Well, that's just a damn lie. I'm a chemist and an engineer. I can test for that. You might have to break it down into pieces before you did it, because there is some complexities in the chemistry. The way that it's put together, the way they process the sludge, things like that. It does take a certain amount of effort and thought process to do it. But it can be tested, and you could know what's in it. But if they did put that out, and you knew what was in it, I guarantee you, if you're a farmer and you were putting it on your land, you'd be scared to death once you saw that list. It isn't just a few things. It isn't just the nitrates and the chemicals that make your crops grow better. It isn't just those things. There was a deal in Northern California about robins disappearing. I just talked to the fellow about it earlier. And they couldn't figure out why the population was dropping. Turned out they were eating worms that were saturated with Prozac from the sludge that was delivered to the land, and they lost the desire to mate. So the robin population dropped over 50% in this area where they put this sludge on. They found out about it, they stopped doing it. But that was just because they tested to find out what was in these robins that made them stop producing other robins. We are not doing that. There's no reason why we can't. So I just hope that people will make enough of us that we'll get some information, whether they want to give it to us or not.
Thank you, Mr. Hammond. Next up is Alan Davis, and on deck is Kayleen Davis.
Hello, my name's Alan Davis. I lived in Loxton, have for 27 years. Own land for 31. Took our kids swimming every year. Ever since then, grandkids. We don't do it anymore because the algae's so bad, so terrible. We don't do it. We don't know what's in the water. But, okay, first of all, this is from the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, Officer Inspector General. They found 352 pollutants in biosolids. This came out November 15, 2018. This is how, and they're saying, on here they say there's 61 designated actively hazardous or hazardous pollutants. So there you go with that. This is, I was in the military, these people inspect and they usually find out it's wrong. And here's what's really puzzling to me about all this, because you know, there's just a lot of nitrates and a lot of things in there that causes algae to grow. But since the Slits River has, as Larry said, the coho, Slits River coho, is endangered or threatened, excuse me, and it is in a designated critical habitat area also. It's under Title 40, Environmental Standards for Use of Disposal of Sewage Sludge, 503.14. I'll read A of it. Bulk sewage sludge shall not be applied to the land if it is likely to be adversely affect adversely affect threatened or endangered species listed under Section 4 of the Endangered Species Act or designated critical habitat area, which is both in the Slits River. And then dumping biosolids that are released into the river is a direct threat to the environment, to the coho's existence, and the critical habitat. You're violating federal law there. And we've been in touch with 2 federal agencies. There is an investigation going on about DEQ doing this. And this is also for DEQ, excuse me, EPA. It's June 28th. They had the meeting. They came out with a report December 4th, 2017. On page 10, it asks how they think microplastics or microsources come. First one says sludge, land applications, and landfill leachings. So you're also getting microscopic plastics, nanoplastics, microscopic plastics, all these biosolids. They all come out, you know what plastic is, they float on water. It gets into the water, the microorganisms leach onto it, they grow a little bit, smaller organisms eat on it, fish come and eat on that, boom, it's in our food chain, because it's just been absorbed to it. All this is online, you can look at all this is the truth. That's new. And this is from a United States Geological Survey, 2017 study. They study all this. It said, wastewater treatment is effective at removing portions of chemicals from incoming waste. However, some chemicals are not removed, but instead are absorbed in biosolid materials. When biosolids are on land applied as fertilizer, the potential exists for chemicals to run off the land surface into local surface waters. Back again, we have the Code of Salmon. They're violating federal laws, all the municipals. We've sent letters to the municipals, we've talked to people, talked to everybody involved, but nobody has told us why they could violate federal law and get away with it. And I'm still, can you tell me that, Andrew, Grant, how you guys can do that? And here's a copy of Toledo's, some of the stuff Toledo has in their biosolids. This is an analytical report. Okay. It has ammonium nitrate, arsenic, cadmium, chromium, copper, iron, lead, mercury, beryllium, nickel, nitrate, nitrate, pH, phosphorus, which feeds algae, potassium, selenium, silver, cajadol, nitrogen, total solids, volatile solids, and zinc. And zinc is a major killer. And copper, zinc and copper are a major killer in the fish. We no longer have any water bugs out of our place anymore. We have no crawfish anymore. And when we first moved out there, until about 5 years ago, there's very little algae. So we used to take the kids down and watch the kids, or watch the salmon go right by us in schools. There hasn't been in schools in years. So this isn't stopped. This is all these municipals drink water. You're getting all these toxins in our water. And most of them cannot, they can only take out about 50% of them, and a lot of them cannot be taken out of your water at all by water treatment. This is very dangerous. And people really need to look at this really strong and hard, because we have a very high cancer rate, heart attack rate, and it just way it is. And when you use chlorine, you get a byproduct, and so as things start, okay, as things get bad, you add more chlorine, which breaks down the bad things for it.
Kayleen Davis, and then up next is Andrew Grant. Mr. Kennedy.
Kayleen Davis, farmer, co-founder, Save Our Celeste River. Guys, I encourage everybody to go see our Save Our Celeste River Facebook. We have a lot of information on there. We sent a lot of emails to DEQ, so they've heard a lot of what we've had to say. As far as their record keeping, well, it's a joke. It really is. And part of the meeting today is because of this meeting, because these permits are so old, one of them back to 1993. Well, that's because, you know, the NPDS, the Oregon's National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, second worst backlog in the entire nation. The Mid-Coast Basin, they've been meeting for years. DEQ is aware of the Celeste River quality, is evaluating the potential source of impairment. They will consider the biosolids may contribute to the water quality issues. DEQ assembled a local stakeholder advisory committee in 2012. And they had ones before that. The TMDL, that was targeted to be ready 2015-16. Now where are we? 2019? Is that what I hear? In the meantime, our river's dying. I grew up on that river. I moved down there when I was 12. I swam in Cedar Creek. There was not algae like this. This river was full of life. Not anymore. I held my babies in that river. The little smolts, you know, they come up and they tickle their toes, and then you put them in the water. When they toddle them, they'd run from those little smolts. And then later they try to catch them. As an adult, I'd still try to catch them. But when do they quit? Well, when they're gone. The lamprey eel, they used to be thick. In fact, you know, at the end of the season, they'd be all over their bodies. It's kind of creepy. You don't see their skeletons any longer either. The crawdads, the in-water bugs, they're all disappearing. And this stuff is dangerous. And it is toxic. And it contaminates the air, the water, and the land. There is airborne dangers. It is in the EPA Health Assessment Manual. I read it. The North Carolina, South Carolina, and Virginia, they did a study on this because the people around there were complaining, and there were health effects. So I'm wondering why the DEQ hasn't done a health study around where the biosolids have been, or toxic sewage sludge. They're not biosolids, they're toxic sewage sludge replaced. We do have a lot of cancer around here. And one of the regulations, the 503.5, additional stringent requirements, on a case-by-case basis, the permit authority may impose requirements to use the disposal of the sludge or or more stringent requirements as part necessary to protect the public health and the environment from the adverse effects of the pollutants sewage sludge. They place this right next to the church. This year, they knocked down the weed hay. I agree, thistles was not fit to be fed to cattle. And then they ended on a crest, H2NS. They brought out the toxic sewage sludge and they dumped it right on top of there, and they left it to rot down, and it stunk. And I could smell it at our house. And then, I don't know what point, Howard, that you went out and tried to rake it, but I was told it was disced under or tilled under by an email. It was not. It wasn't haloed under either. It sat there. He tried to rake it around, but it didn't really go anywhere. It eventually, the rain probably flushed it. It's in the river probably by now. I filed complaints. Complaints are not followed up on. You get no satisfactory answer. This is just crazy. I just don't understand why anybody would do this. And neighbors, farmers, I'm asking you. If the city and the DEQ won't stop, why won't you? Please think about the health of your welfare of your neighbors, in your case, because this stuff is inhuman.
Next up is Andrew Grant, and on deck is Claire Hall.
All right. So I represent Biosolids Applier. I have reviewed these permits, and I think that updating all the permits to the current standards is a great idea. The agronomic loading rates I would agree with. The even restrictions for all sites provides not only easier oversight, transparency to the public, and it's easy benefits the appliers that we have one set of rules for all sites throughout that we may use throughout the year. So yeah, in summary, I reviewed the authorizations, and I feel as though they are in the best interest of the cities, the landowners, the community, and that it's important to remember that setbacks and restrictions, these are all science-based. These numbers aren't pulled out of thin air. So there is a margin of safety, a safety factor built into all of these numbers. So that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Grant. Claire Hall.
Good evening. My name is Claire Hall. I live in Newport. I am here in my role as a Lincoln County Commissioner and also appearing on behalf of my colleagues Terry Thompson and Doug Hunt. We have submitted a detailed letter for the record electronically. In the interests of time, I just want to briefly summarize the high points of the letter. We are asking DEQ to consider a moratorium on land applications within the Siletz watershed at this time. Failing that, we're asking that no land application be approved within 500 feet of the river or 250 feet of any year-round tributary that drains directly into the river. We are asking for significantly more restrictive conditions on timeframes where applications will be allowed. May 1st is likely too early a starting date under recent weather trends. Spillage of liquid Class B biosolids has been a documented problem in the county. Disqualification or elimination of non-compliant contractors must be undertaken, and local operators must be held accountable for violations by their contractors. Inspection and monitoring requirements remain unworkable unless state and operator resources are increased to ensure compliance. Notifications to interested persons and groups of application schedules, testing and reporting documentation, and enforcement activities should be automatic if requested. On-site signage and public access to application site requirements needs to be adequately enforced. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hall. Up next is John Sullivan, followed by Linda Hughes and Cliff Lee.
My name is John Sullivan. I live in the Logsdon area, and I've been out there almost 30 years. I am a fisherman, so I'm very familiar with the river. I monitor the river. I'm the river steward. I have some questions I'd like to get some answers for. In the past, you ask questions and you never get an answer. Number one, can we get a testing baseline for each of these sites that they're going to apply on? I went back and reviewed all the land site tests that I can get my hands on, and the latest one I can find is 4 years ago. Before that, it was 7 years ago. So, and there are some sites that I can't find ever having been tested, period, for what damage is being occurred to them. If we're not going to monitor this program, it can never work. I don't think it's going to work anyway, but if you don't monitor it, and that is DEQ's responsibility, the state of Oregon has total control over biosolids. DEQ has total responsibility for monitoring the program that they put out. They're failing. Tonight we're reviewing these, as already been said. Most of these, 5 out of these 6, the last time they had a permit was in 2005. It was for a 5-year period of time. 2010 it ran out. Here we are over 8 years later after the termination date of that permit, and we're now finally getting some new permits. Have anything changed? Let's talk about it. What about the testing of these sites? One of the sites they proclaim very loudly is we're going to test every 2 out of 3 years. My friends, 2 out of 3 years is just a figure to put out there to figure out how to get around it. Ask Lincoln City. They tested for 2 out of 3 years for almost 20 years. And never did they make one land test on any site they had. Not one. When I talked them into testing a site and it was saturated, they stopped applying on all sites they had. DEQ didn't enforce that. My question is, when you say 2 out of 3 years, is that whether they're applying or not applying? Is it every 2 out of 3 years? No, they say put on 2, stop a year, put on 2, stop a year, you never test. There are no tests being done on over 90% of the sites. That's number one. Number two, the other dodge, at agronomic rates. Oh, 100 pounds an acre. Not to worry, buddy, I have to test if I put on 100 pounds an acre, so I'm going to put on 90 pounds an acre, and I have avoided ever having to test that soil. So DEQ has a heck of a time trying to monitor the program. Their program is a paper tiger. It's useless. With setbacks, they say that the operator, communities, have the responsibility for doing the setbacks. And then the setbacks are not defined strongly enough. 200 feet from a water source, drinking water source. It took us quite a while to get them to put the Sletch River in as a drinking water source. One of these sites is up on Rock Creek. Rock Creek is only 500 yards from where it empties into the Sletch River. Are you going to set back 200 yards from the Rock Creek? At the drinking source. The city of Toledo, written up in the paper, they don't meet the biochemical oxygen demand, better known as BOD. Many times, not once, not twice, not 3 times, not 4 times, they're waiting to see if they're going to get fined. That same sewage sludge is still taken out and applied, even though it did not have the proper amount of oxygen in it to get the biochemical breakdown. Still applied, it just didn't do what it's supposed to do. We're monitoring this program, aren't we? Application. They say there's, I'm going to give you a example. 10 acres. I've got 10 acres to apply on. But the setbacks are determined by the people who apply it. DEQ doesn't have a clue what the setbacks are. They devoid themselves of having to even check it. Whether it's from rivers, wells, roads, etc. When you get done, that 10 acres is down to about 8 acres. When you send it in, they're still running on the 10 acres because that's what this plot is.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan.
I have one more thing to say. Can we please get a baseline test for these sites so that later on we know where we started and where we're at? Right now, you don't know where you're at and you don't know where you're going.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. Linda Hughes and Cliff Mann.
Yay, John!
David, when is it?
Do you need an extra chair?
No, I'm going to stand
Okay,
there.
and do you need more than 5 minutes?
Oh, I don't think so.
Okay, so we'll keep it at 5
I'm not very good at speaking in public. My name is Linda Hughes,
And I'm Clifford Mann.
and I live at 7174 Loxton Road, and I have a permit for Biosolids. I've lived out there for 33 years. I run cattle and hay production, a small contained operation. The vet comes out annually. My cattle are healthy, and my background has been 20 years in water treatment. I hold 4 certificates. I have worked for the city of Toledo for over 20 years in water treatment, and I've treated the Slets River.
Please, hold on just a minute, Linda. It really makes it hard to hear the recording if there's background noise, so if we can let Linda continue, I'd appreciate it.
Anyways, nobody cares more about that river than me, since I had treated daily for 20 years. I have worked with the health department, Safe Water Drinking Act, and have met all the standards, and I care about that land. Now, if you want to come out and test my soil and my wells, you're more than welcome to, but I feel, based on scientific evidence, is that I am doing no wrong, and straight cow manure that comes out of my barn, applied to the land, or from pigs that I'm entitled to grow, or commercial fertilizer, which is pure nitrogen, which is all within my rights. My rights are, I'm zoned A, I have the right to farm. And I'm going to do so under the current regulations of meeting farm deferral and being zoned A. So that's all I have to say.
I'd like to add some stuff. I was born here in Newport. I was raised in the Upper Valley. My grandparents sold the property to the county that is now Moonshine Park. So I've lived there all my life. We farmed, and back to stewardship, I am a steward. So I really don't like you people telling me that I am wrong because I support this. Now, Mr. Sullivan brings up a lot of interesting issues. Perhaps we do need more testing, and I agree with that. And if we can get the government to go along with that, I'm okay with it. But we need to quit being hysterical about this. These are the laws, they're the rules and the regulations. Let's work together. When you guys claim that I am a bad person for what I do, I shut you out. I call you kooks. So please, let's get along. Don't look at me like I'm a kook. Thank you.
So the next speaker, I'm not sure I have this right, the last name right, first name is Celine. And I believe it might be, but she'll say it, I think it's R-I-L-A-T-U-S. Relatus.
I left all my notes at home. But I just can't believe what I just heard. I grew up on the Siletz River my whole life, and for the people that just spoke, to say that it's safe, I'm just like appalled right now. But I did leave my notes at home. I will send them by the 21st. And yeah, I think we all care about the river. That's why we're all here. I look at Jeff Mann, Kayleen, Robert, a lot of the core people here, Kathy, Shireen, we all went to school together, you know? And here we are, friends of the river. Well, it doesn't feel very friendly sometimes. But I just really feel like I worked for my tribe for 35 years, and when I think about not having a permit all this time and still allowing this to happen, who's answering for that, you know? The government testing, there's so many loopholes in there. You heard Mr. Sullivan speak about that. He said most everything that I would like to say in my email to you all. You know, a lot of good speakers have spoke today, and I don't know if there's any name calling being done here. I've not heard it. Every time I've been to the commissioners meeting, there hasn't been name calling. That's not why we're here. We're here to say, who's not doing their job? Our river is dying. I haven't even taken my grandkids to swim in the river this year. Not one time. That's the first time in my whole life I have not swam in the river. I used to go eeling when I was a little girl with Robert and Kathy Kenta. Like Kayleen mentioned, there are no eels. And is that partly because of biosolids? Of course it is. And to say it's not, who are we kidding? Who are we kidding here? I didn't plan on speaking today, but I love our river, and it is a very passionate subject for a lot of us, and we have a reputation. Apparently the core group of us, Betty, is because we care about the future generations. It's not just about you and me, it's about our great-grandchildren. We have that in our constitution with the tribe, that we need to protect and promote our religious ways, and that river is part of our religion. Without our river, without our water, what are we going to do? How many brought bottled water here today, you know? It's really sad. And to think that it's not about you and me. That river matters to each one of us. That's why we're all here. And yes, I'm very upset. And that there is no name calling here. I'm just saying we need to protect our water. And that's why each one of us is here. And somebody's not doing their job. And so why are they still working for us? They're not working for us. They're not working to save our river.
Thank you, Celine.
All right.
Next up is, I believe it's Crystal Martin. Is that correct?
I decline my time for right now.
Next up is Susan Weatherby, followed by Betty Kamakawa. Is that correct?
Well, I wrote down what I had to say because I'm scared to death. I want to say a word about duty. Duty to keep our children and our grandchildren safe. Duty to keep our water and our earth safe. We gotta love our earth like we love our grandchildren. We all have grandchildren. We know that that's a special kind of love. We need to save our water or our children aren't going to be here. We've got to quit dumping sludge. We call it biosolids. We all know what it is. We all know where it comes from. They're finding chemicals in it that I don't understand where our sense of duty comes from. Is it about money? Why isn't our laws being upheld? People sit here in this chair and tell us about what our laws are and what they are supposed to do for us. They're doing nothing for us. You have a sense of duty to us. DEQ works for us. I don't understand why that's not being followed through on. Why these laws aren't being upheld. I don't understand where our sense of duty is. Where does it start? It's got to start with us, just people. Just people that love our rivers, our water, our earth. It's not just our water we're hurting. Our water feeds us. We live. Water is our life. We have to stop dumping. I hate to say biosolids. We have to stop dumping. We have to save the earth and the water. We have to save it. We have to start here on our river. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Betty?
I'm Betty Kamikawa, and I'm part of the Save Our Sleds River group. First, I want to say that I have the utmost respect for everybody in this room and everybody who lives on the river and around the river and all of Lincoln County. I have a degree in agronomy with an emphasis in soils, and I've worked in the soil testing industry. I worked with Biosolids back in the 80s when all we thought was we had to worry about the heavy metals. It's a lot more than that. Every year, as human beings, we make new compounds that we use all over this world, and it ends up in our biosolids, and it ends up in our drinking water, and we have got to be concerned with that. We don't test for nearly any of it. We just, we're told we can't, we're told there's not enough money, it goes on and on and on. It just doesn't happen. And so there's no proof that it's safe, and there's no proof that it's not safe, but we're the test subjects. Do you really want to be the guinea pigs? I don't want to be a guinea pig, and I certainly don't want my daughters and my future grandchildren. I don't want them to be the guinea pigs. We need to think about what we're doing to this planet. The EPA, the thing that Alan brought up, the Office of Inspector Generals said that there are, things in the biosolids, lots of chemicals, and I want you to understand that that part of the EPA is paid separately. Their funding is totally separate from the US EPA, which means that they are completely independent of the EPA, which means when they say that they've tested it and they know that it's in there, that has nothing to do with the US EPA. That has to do with them testing it and saying, it's there, we need to take this seriously. And now the EPA is trying to discredit their own Inspector General's office because they don't want us to get into this kind of thing that we're doing here. We have to do something with biosolids. We have to. We're going to continue to make them every day, just like we always do. And the only other option is we're not here on the planet, which we could end up killing ourselves with the biosolids. We have to think of other ways to dispose of them than putting them on the land. And this is our drinking water. This is our lives. And like I said, I have all the respect in the world for everybody in this room and everybody in this county. And, I don't want to see any of us get sick from this. And I don't want to see anything happen to any of us. And I don't want to be a guinea pig. Thank you.
Thank you, Betty.
Hey, Betty. Send her to the governor's office.
Next up is Kathy, I believe it's Robbins, followed by Shireen Roller.
My name's Kathy Kenta Robinson, and I've lived in. My name is Kathy Kenta Robinson, and I've lived in the Siletz River area for most of my life. I raised my children in Eugene and Bend and moved back just a few years ago to live on our family property, and was shocked at entering into the river and realizing the degradation, mainly in the sediment, had completely changed from when I was a child. It was disgusting. I almost went up to my knees in different layers of scum and clay, heavier, darker clay, sticky, slimy slime, and green algae that was stringing and alarming. And so I had noticed for a few years, and always kept thinking, one of these days I'm going to make time to call and try and figure out where these trucks are coming from, because it seems very suspicious. They're always coming right around at 6 o'clock in the morning, and they're flying past the house, and they're in tandem, And I always wonder, what the heck are they doing? What are they hauling? And it wasn't until this year that our local little neighborhood, became more investigating what is going on and talking amongst each other about what we were experiencing. And I've had quite a few childhood friends die at my age that were serious cancer, all kinds of serious abnormal diseases for our tiny little community. And this has been going on for decades. And so, my concern, first of all, we're talking about a lot of different concerns, but when I found out that which are my neighbors, my friends, I grew up with a lot of these farmers and ranchers, is why, if it's such a benefit to them and it reduces their cost for fertilizer, are they still getting compensated? To me, it's like a buying off. It's like buying off their silence, and that feels really good. So I suggest you change that budget around a little bit, and let's move that money that they're getting compensated like double, because not only are they getting the benefit, but now they're getting paid off. So let's move that budget around a little bit. Wouldn't we pay for more testing before the applications get approved? Stop compensating the ranches, the farmers immediately, because it's so dangerous. We don't know. You don't know. We know you don't know. So that's
Thank you, Ms. Robinson. Next up is Shireen. And let me take this opportunity. Yeah, did you have any more cards?
I was ready for this.
I'm Shireen Rowland. I'm the crazy lady that the First Lady spoke about. I'm going to tell you that I too grew up on the Siletz River. I used to buy hay from Jeff. My family bought hay from Jerry Kudador for over 45 years. Then my horses started getting sick. And so, long story short, I switched hay and I now drive to Redmond in the Madras area. I pay $2.55 a ton plus a 4-hour drive to drive over and bring back 8 ton of hay. Would I rather be buying it from local people? Damn straight. Here's a little funny thing that happened since our last meeting. I started asking my fellow horsemen in the area when they started switching hay over the valley. Every one of them, same reactions my horses got. The cough, the swollen lymph nodes, the soaking of the hay, and finally just cutting it out altogether, whammo. 5 people I talked to that owned horses that used to get them in this area, 4 of them sold their horses, 3 had to be put down. So, I'm paying $2.50 a ton for orchard grass hay and driving over the valley and buying it. This year I thought, I'm tired of feeding my goats $250 orchard grass hay, And a friend of mine just so happened to inherit a farm that does not use biosolids and feeds locally. Guess what? My 20-year-old mare is cleaning up the hay and not a sniffle. No biosolids. So, because I compete in horse and cow events around the state, I belong to 5 different clubs. I have friends that own the Knee Deep Cattle Company, if you're familiar with that, in Eugene, that they sell organic beef. I have a friend that I compete with, Floyd Foster, down in the further south in the Roseburg competitions that I do down there in 10 Mile, Oregon. And I asked them, because Floyd has one of the second largest dairy farms on the coast in Oregon. I said, what, do you feed hay that's treated? He goes, are you kidding me? I like my cows. I don't feed that crap. I have friends that hay 400-acre fields out in the Perrydale area. I asked them, what do you do for your fertilizer? When I asked them if they use biosolids, they were like, who uses that crap? Literally. Why would we do that with our animals? So that kind of made me start thinking, it's just not hysteria. And I don't understand why the farmers that I bought hay from for 45 years, why they had to switch to biosolids. Wasn't there something else they could use? Okay, so that's the farmer end of me. I'm also an avid kayaker. I kayak around the state, go to different rivers, and I own 10 acres on the Uquina Bay River, up at the headlands. I'm down at my river every day playing with my dogs. I have labs, try to keep a lab out of the water when they live on the river. Doesn't happen. Guess what? My dog spends all the time chasing little schools of fish on the Uquina River. I have crawdads, I throw down chicken legs, I watch them crawl around because I raise chickens too. You know, the point is I don't see the crap that I've seen on the Siletz River. I quit kayaking the Siletz River. It kind of disgusts me. I used to live on the Siletz, grew up on the Siletz.